Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, a brother and sister named Hansel and Gretel lived with their father in a cabin in the woods. His father was a poor carpenter. His wife, his mother, died when both children were very young. His father thought that when he finally remarried, he would no longer be single. But the new stepmother made life very difficult for Hansel and Gretel. The children were not allowed to eat until the stepmother took whatever she wanted from the plate. Most of the time there was only one roti left. And the whole day was hard work for him. Hansel and Gretel tried to tell their father about this, but he did not listen. It seemed that he was the only one who would listen to his wife. And all the stepmother talked about was how hard it was to keep the kids in the hut, and how she wanted them to be gone forever. There was more or less food for the boys and girls to eat every day. Yet the stepmother forced him to work harder. One day Gretel entreated her father, "Please, Dad. We work hard all day and we are hungry." But the stepmother slapped him. "You ungrateful boys," he cried, "you will eat us out of our houses." That night both the children were not allowed to sleep in the hut. They are shivering in the cold outside and trying to keep each other warm. Winter was approaching, and the clothes they were wearing were so thin that they looked as if they were not wearing any. When the sun came out the next morning, Gretel turned to her younger brother. "Hansel," she said, "we cannot stay here. We have to run now, today, into the woods. We will surely get more if we are alone than what we get at home." "What do you think?" Hansel said. "But what if we get lost?" "We will not." Gretel said. "I will take bread. We will leave breadcrumbs behind us. If we have to, we can bring the pieces back home." And so they both went to the forest and left behind their difficult life. They went further into the forest. "Gretel is a piece of cake. Throw the pieces." But alas! They looked and looked for any signs they were eating an apple tree, a pear tree, some nuts on the ground, or even dried berries. There was nothing to eat. They are starving and starving. In the end, poor Hansel and Gretel knew they had to go back to their hut or they would surely starve. They just need to find the breadcrumbs and it will take them home. Yet when he looked for breadcrumbs, none was found, all the breadcrumbs were gone. A bird jumped in the air and had a big piece in its beak. Hansel and Gretel are stunned, the birds must have taken all their breadcrumbs. A wolf shouted in the distance. The sun was setting. Hansel and Gretel were lost and hungry. Now they too are scared. Gretel whispered timidly, "Hansel, what shall we do?" He didn't know what to say. All he could do was hug his younger brother. It was getting deeper and deeper every minute. Again, a wolf screamed in the distance. Suddenly Gretel saw a small light shining from afar. Could it be someone's hut in the dense forest? "We must find out," Gretel cried. "Maybe character who lives there will be kind and take us in." Both the children ran as fast as they could towards the light. He couldn't believe his eyes when he came near. If you can imagine, the hut was made of candy from top to bottom. From its gingerbread ceiling, with frost on the walls, and candy stuck in the snow, what a sight! "Gretel!" Hansel shouted. Before Gretel said, "I bet it would be fine if we tasted a little bit," they were both already biting into small pieces and licking the sweet candy. A hoarse voice. "Who's messing around in my room?" "Hansel and Gretel are walking." "An old witch." Shocked, Gretel can only curse. "If you please, ma'am," she said as sweetly as she could. "You had a lot of candy at home. And we're so hungry." You have that right, my house. The witch was knocked out. His voice dropped. Okay then, said the witch softly, come in. I will bring you some food. Hansel and Gretel looked at each other happily. They went to the witch's hut. A good meal of soup and bread. When they licked the last pile of bread and looked around the hut, what the brothers and sisters saw cooled their hearts. A pile of bones and a pile of bones in the corner. Still both the children were very tired, fell asleep. When they wake up the next morning, Hansel finds himself locked in a cage. The witch roared and said, your brother will be there. Every day I will make him fat. Soon he'll make good food for me. He smiled and caressed his hands happily. Until then, he said sharply to Gretel, you will work for me. In fact, Hansel was well fed and Gretel worked hard all day at witchcraft. Every morning the witch would say to the boy, show me your finger. I will feel how fat you are getting. The old witch could not see very well. As she was told, Hansel held her finger. The witch smiled as she felt how fat she was getting. Gretel, whispered timidly Hansel. What are we doing? Soon I'll be fat enough and the witch wants to eat me. Her sister wished she had a plan, but she couldn't think of any. One night while the witch was sleeping, Gretel had an idea. He woke up the brother by picking up a bone from the pile lying on the floor. Hansel, she said, the next time the witch asks to see your finger, hold this bone to her. The next morning he did the same. Hum. The witch touched the bone and said that it was the son's finger. It's going to take longer than I thought. At least I have more time, thought Gretel. But still, he couldn't think of a way out for them. Every morning when the witch would say, show me your finger, Hansel grabbed the thin bone. One day the witch cried out, I can't wait another day. Boy, will I have my dinner tonight, no matter how skinny she is. The witch ordered Gretel to immediately light the hearth. It must be very hot. Gretel worked as slowly as possible. Why was the witch looking at him with such a sly smile? Be dear, said the witch softly. You go to the oven, right? Tell me when it's hot. Gretel's heart was beating. If he does, the witch can push him in and he'll eat them both. The girl looked down. I'm not sure how to say that. You go inside the oven, don't you? Nonsense, said the witch. Nothing can be easier. Just go in. Said Gretel softly, show me first, please. You stupid girl. Fucked the witch. Mumbling, he stepped into the oven. As the witch was inside Gretel, she quickly knocked on the door. Gretel. Hansel shouted, you saved us. Didi tried to think quickly. Where's the key to your cage? He saw. At last he found it under a vase. He immediately freed his brother from the cage. Then he went back to the vase. Why did he feel under the key? Why, there was a precious stone inside the vase. Then he went back to the vase. They ran out as fast as they could with their pockets full of jewels. He soon found a short path in broad daylight and followed it. It led to a wide road and that path led to a road. They waited on the side of the road to see if someone would ride. When a horseman came aboard, Hansel and Gretel shook hands. When the horseman stopped, the children presented a small piece of jewelry and the horseman was happy to give them a ride home. When the brothers and sisters opened the door of their house, their father jumped with joy to see them. They were worried ever since they disappeared and were looking for them day and night. He learned that his stepmother died soon after he left. For many years to come, Hansel and Gretel lived very happily with their father in a cabin in the woods.